Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield, as always. And today, we have a special guest. Brian Earhart is back with us on the program. Brian, welcome. How are you?
I am fantastic. Just gearing up for tour yet again. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. On this Thursday, February 8th, we are so close to the start of the 2024 season. And it's a chance today for us to kind of lay out the land and get you ready for the season. Now, there's going to be a little bit of nuts and bolts today for those of you who are maybe a little bit newer to following the tour, trying to kind of understand how it works. It's a lot less confusing than it was like even 3 years ago when we had the National Tour and the Pro Tour, and there were these different point series, and it was all very complicated. These days, it's pretty much... We got the Disc Golf Pro Tour events. We've got the majors. They all feed into the same point system with the top players qualifying to play at the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship. There is also now a semi-separate European Tour that has its own point series, but most of the big tournaments over there also feed points into the main Disc Golf Pro Tour point standings. And it all makes sense. Regular events are worth 100 points for a win. And as events get more prestigious, like the Elite Plus events, the playoffs, and then the majors at the top, they each get progressively more points. So winning a major is worth twice as much now as winning a regular season tournament. Great change from the tour. Love to see that. And it really feels like things are correctly aligned in terms of incentives for players to go to select events. Brian, you're a veteran of the tour. How do you feel like the sort of the evolution of the kind of like beginning to the end of the season focus is now that we're here in 2024?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is that there's just less tournaments. And I think last year, I think Calvin Heimburg was actually the most vocal about this. But, you know, with the Silver Series kind of being in place last year, or the Silver events as they called them, they were 50% of the points, and a lot of players felt like they had to play an extra 5-6 tournaments on the season. And then towards the end, you got that crazy stretch of 4-round tournament, 4-round tournament, major. I think a lot of players just got fried and injured, and it kind of made for a stressful finish for a lot of the players. This year, we have done away with the silver events. We're adding a different type of series, I believe, in regards to qualifying to get a tour card. But now the players can focus on the big ones. And I also believe that the majors should be worth more. I know that there's been talks in the past that majors sometimes don't feel like they're as important as they used to be, because every player that's at Idlewild is probably going to be at the majors as well. I'm not to say that Idlewild is not a big tournament, but it's just a regular Elite Series event. But there should be a field there. There should be an event where we assign a lot of importance to it. And I think it's a great change. I think twice the points is totally understandable. I mean, again, if you have a player like Isaac Robinson who wins 2 major events like he did last year, and maybe he does average at some of the other events, he should still be way up the points list. He should still be way up the leaderboard. So I love it. I think it's great.
So I want to talk about a couple of things that may have gone under the radar for you. There are some rule changes here in 2024. Nothing that's too dramatic, but there are a few things that we could see affect tour. And a lot of the changes are more clerical in nature, but there are 3, I think, that really rise to the level of being interesting to fans of professional disc golf. And the first one we talked about, we were just talking about it in our pre-show discussion. The rules about clearing the lie of, a stick or an obstacle that's behind your lie has changed. It used to read that you were able to move things that were in a position where you might take a stance. So if there was a stick right behind your disc, you could move it. But now the rule says you can move any obstacle that is behind your lie anywhere. So if there's something that is maybe in the path on your run-up, but wouldn't be in your stance, you can now remove that obstacle so that you have a clean run-up. Josh, how do you feel about this change?
This is an excellent change because, and a lot of people speculated that this rule kind of came from when at Worlds, Paul moved a stump that was intentionally placed as an obstacle part of the green. And then the next year we get this rule that says, you can't move anything except that's in your lie. And what I think is interesting and was a problem, you saw videos of like pros who would, and I think Casey White was one of them, or like Alden Harris, they would lay down behind their disc to establish a legal supporting lie and then stretch out to show how far back they could clear stuff. And that was kind of like their joke about like how far you can take this rule. But the point is that in especially wooded courses, when you want to have a run up and you just have an unfortunate limb that has fallen in your path, it doesn't make sense from a safety perspective. If you have rocks in your lie that, if you were to take a step, just a one step for your throw, could really jeopardize safety without much return. And so I think this is an excellent change. I think it's a change that really is oriented towards player safety and one that was a big mistake by the PDGA in the first place, and I'm glad that they've rectified it.
I feel like, what's the counterpoint? I don't even know that there is one. Oh, you should avoid that stick on the left side of the fairway 350 feet down that you can't see from the tee. Like, it's so stupid. Like, there's already enough weird randomness in disc golf that, like, requiring people to have to do a little jump over a rock or a stick in order to be able to throw their shot or be forced into a standstill because of, like, essentially total randomness. It's already random enough when you get tucked behind a tree and you have to go to a patent pending. Let's not make people roll their ankles on random debris.
I'll take that counterpoint, Charlie. And I'm not saying that I agree with the counterpoint, but I definitely understand the other side of it. And first off, I think also going along with what Josh is saying, I think one of the reasons for the rule change originally of making it harder to clear things out of your lie was for pace of play. I think that also was a factor in it because sometimes players will take that a long way clearing debris out of their lie, and they'll have the card come help them out. And it takes quite a bit of time. And then you have 4 players doing that. Maybe it's a wooded par 4. Maybe you have players doing that 4 or 5 times per hole, and you have kind of a tough situation. So going along with the fact that players are not necessarily calling the clearing of debris part of the 30 seconds of throwing, you do have some backups that start up because of that. So I understand that. But then also on the other side, if we just throw that in the trash and we try to come up with a gameplay counter argument, I think some people want the players to just adapt. And you throw off the tee pad, you should have no obstacles. When you're out there on the course, you should be able to throw a standstill. And I think they wanted to see the players not always have a perfect run-up tee pad, so to speak, to throw the shot. But I agree in the sense that there's enough challenge in footing and disc golf anyway. And even if you clear your lie of debris, most of the time there's going to be stumps, there's going to be roots, there's going to be slickness on the ground, stuff that you can't necessarily see or predict ahead of time. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a great change.
Yeah, slopes and weird ditches and things like that are still going to force players to throw standstills all the time. Mm-hmm. Speaking of pace of play, that's another big change. There's now a rule on the books, and this is essentially what you see on the PGA Tour. An entire group can get put on the clock if a group is causing slow play, as opposed to just a single individual out there playing slowly. It will be interesting to see how this is utilized by TDs, by the tour, because oftentimes you do see if there's a couple of slow players on a card, the card ends up being glacial. And perhaps you could argue that that's only due to the 1 or 2 players who are playing slowly, but their partners are often not calling them on time violations, not pressing them to play more quickly, and you then end up with one card playing super slow. There's now a mechanism in the rules for the entire card to be put on the clock, and then you have an official timing everybody on the card, and if they're still playing slow, the whole group can get stroked. So I like this change because I think that incentivizes better overall enforcement of the rules by the players themselves because they don't want to have to get put on the clock as a group. And to me, while this will be rarely used, I expect we'll see it a couple times this season. And probably once you put the group on the clock, everyone's going to play a lot faster. And you won't need to actually send out strokes in order to make things improve. Thoughts?
I'll take this one first. I think anything to get the players to self-officiate more is good. On the other side of that, I think we talked about this briefly before the podcast started. We'll see if the players actually are forced to have to call themselves more. We'll see how ridiculous 30 seconds actually is. We'll see if it's an appropriate amount of time, or with all the randomness in disc golf, if it's not enough time. And we could go through a really uncomfortable period where players are like, what the heck? This is just simply not enough time to throw. And now I'm getting stroked, frequently. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I think it's going to be great to uncover how valuable and accurate the 30-second rule actually is now that it's going to start to get called more.
I think the reason I like the group play one is because what it does, it's the 30-second rule is odd, but the way that the rule feels, and when you look at slow play, it's not that because one player takes more than 30 seconds one or two times that it's a problem, right? It's people who take chronically long in certain situations or are regularly taking too long. And it's funny because I almost think of the quote, the phrase, I know it when I see it. Like, I don't exactly know how slow is slow play, but I know it when I see it. And the reason I know it is because there's backups on parts of the courses where there shouldn't be. And so this targets the, oh yeah, I know it when I see it kind of mentality. When you are walking along the course and you see a backup with a card and it's not on hole 12 at Ledgestone, then you should probably be looking at that card and starting to follow them and decide if they need to be put on the clock. And
that's a high bar, Josh. Only hole 12 at Ledgestone is in a legitimate backup hole.
But at least you start asking questions at that point, and I think that's what I like about this change.
All right, the last one of note, and no real indication at this time whether we're going to see this used on tour, but I bet we will once or twice this season. The playoff rule, of course, we all know what a playoff looks like. Sudden death, players, if they're tied at the end of regulation, they go to a hole, they play the hole. If they tie, they keep playing, but if one player beats the score of the other player on the hole, the tournament is over and they're crowned the champ. Now, you can also choose as a tournament director to play a set of 6 or fewer holes that is an aggregate playoff. So you could say, okay, our playoff is holes 16, 17, 18, and whoever has the best score at the end of those 3 holes wins the tournament. And then perhaps if it's still tied, you go to a sudden death at that point. I think one of the problems with the sudden death playoff system, while it is certainly exciting, it's very random. You're playing one hole, maybe 2 holes, and it just feels like, one player makes one bad shot and it's over. And so you go to a playoff, and even if you have Kristen Tattar, number 1 player on earth by a mile, playing against Holland Handley, who's had this great tournament, but, kind of coughed up some strokes late, they play 1 hole, and Holland wins. And it was exciting at Throw Pink. There's no question about it. But what would it have looked like if they had played the full set of potential playoff holes once through? I think that has the opportunity to be a lot more strategically interesting, a lot more decision-making to talk about, and feels like a little less fluky as a way to decide who actually wins the tournament. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah. First, be careful with the word fluky. The Discord will come after you. So that's a dangerous word here. Here's the biggest problem with a sudden death playoff format as it previously was. The decision-making calculus was so heavily tilted in the direction of you must play safe. You cannot make a mistake, so the priority is playing safe and waiting to see which player makes a mistake. While there is some interest to that, there was never an incentive to make the hero shot, to go for what would be a little bit more of a risky shot to get an advantage on your opponent. Number one, because I think the playoff doesn't develop long enough, and so we're playing holes that, you only have like one hole, so there isn't a lot of decision making outside of that singular hole. But number two now, and what I think is more important is, because it's an aggregate, one mistake doesn't feel like a death blow right off the bat. And so maybe you do play a little bit riskier shot to gain an advantage and give yourself, an easy birdie on the first hole and then cruise. And it now creates and balances out that calculus a little bit, to the point that I think we will see some more interesting shots out of players, as opposed to just both play it safe, play the easy route, and see who makes a mistake first.
Brian, anything to add?
I think it depends on the design of the holes that they're playing. I think aggregate for USDGC or throw pink is fantastic. I think hole 1, 17, and 18 played aggregate is awesome. Because, again, like you said, Holland coming down the stretch, she got that great break on the drive, but then she went OB, I believe, 2 more times after that, and almost blew it. And Kristen going OB on 17 might not have mattered if they were playing aggregate. If Holland was struggling with that hole, she just has the bad memory of what happened previously. It could be an extremely exciting finish to have a player make a mistake early and then be able to have this heroic comeback to win. And also, I think with sudden death, the coin flip matters too much too. I like the idea that it doesn't matter if the players are going first or second in aggregate, because you have so many more shots to throw, and it's guaranteed. So, and you can steal the box from somebody if necessary, and it kind of balances itself out like that. So I think that's on the TDs and, the tour or whoever makes the decisions to pick very intentionally, like where the players are playing, because that definitely matters.
Agreed. One more note. No more notes on rules. That's the big stuff there. And so
we'll
rule
changes,
how it affects the tour this season. And let's talk now about the courses. I think we already mentioned the big change. The silver events have been eliminated. There's going to be a new qualifying tour, like a set of tournaments that if you're not a touring player, you can play to accumulate points to get onto the tour. This was always the long-run plan for these silver tournaments, but they ended up being sort of Pro Tour lights, and you would have 25% of touring players playing them, but they kind of on, it was like worse-run events, less oversight from the tour. Sometimes we got great courses, sometimes we got duds. So now they've really streamlined the tour and created a lot more space between events. It's not a lot of times in the season where we're going to be going back to back. And we certainly are not going to see what we saw last year, where we had like 5 weekends in a row with Elite Series or Majors. It was way too much. And this is something I've been looking forward to seeing for quite some time. So I just wanted to note the biggest changes, some tournaments that are coming to the tour this year that were not on the tour last year. First of all, we've got the Throwdown the Mountain property, the now Olympus course that was bought by Paul Macbeth and Dylan Cease. That will be the kickoff tournament this year as Las Vegas Challenge leaves the tour. They are also bringing Beaver State Fling back to the tour. We've got 2 brand new tour courses at Worlds that are going to be hosting down in Virginia that we'll get to see. And then Texas States is back. It's in Houston this year. So that will be, I believe, a brand new course to tour. Do you know the course much from that tournament, Brian?
You said Texas States?
Yes.
Yeah, I commentated a fantastic finish with Sayananda and Kristen Tattar, I think, as an FPO course. It scores really well. I think a lot of the players were very happy with how it was designed. Some of them said it was kind of bland, just, again, being on flat ground. But I think it scored fantastic. And then for the men, I think it got mixed reviews. I think a lot of times players sometimes see the rope lining the fairways and they just kind of get tired of their holes getting consistently lined on either side. But I thought the shot selection was pretty incredible. I thought that Calvin put on a phenomenal show out there. I thought it was one of the most compelling silver events on the tour.
That's right. So this is Brock Park again.
Yeah. Yep.
I had kind of blocked this out of my mind, maybe because it was called Innova Open last year. But I remember this course because it had the pin up on a really steep hill, and that was when Sayananda really went off. That was like the big Sayananda breakout tournament.
It was great. It played so well. I thought it was a really compelling course. And on both sides, it delivered a really great result. And I also love that there's a separate FPO and a separate MPO course, which is rare, and I love it.
So those are the new courses to tour. Of course, we have Champions Cup changing venues, as WR Jackson has been essentially eliminated due to the tree clearing, but they're putting a new course in down at the IDGC that should be ready for Champions Cup next year, 2025. Instead, it will be played at Northwood Black, which means that also affects Ledgestone because they won't use Northwood Black during Ledgestone this year. It'll be 4 rounds at Eureka. But, we know those courses, of course, very well. So those are the big changes on the course front. I think an interesting note, we were talking beforehand about how last year it felt like there were a lot of open courses on the tour. And I wanted to take a look at, has that changed going into this year? So I categorized the courses from last year, and I picked out 7 from the Elite Series, so excluding silvers, that I either categorized as open or wide open. That was Las Vegas Challenge, Open at Austin, Music City Open, Jonesboro, OTB Open, DDO, Dynamic Disc Open in Emporia, and Preserve. And then the back half of the tour was like all woods or park or mixed use stuff, which makes sense. You're on the East Coast. Those are the kinds of courses we play on the East. But Josh, it looks a little different this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And so when we went through and did the same categorization, the biggest change when we look at open or wide open courses, we go down to 6 when we lose Las Vegas, putting in then the chess.com Invitational at the Throwdown of the Mountain property, which really is a wooded course. It's very wooded. So that switch is very nice. And the biggest thing, and Charlie, you highlighted this when we were chatting a little bit, is it breaks up the course and the tournament or the schedule so nicely. It's not Vegas followed by Texas followed by Midwest that's open. It's really like, you get to start in the woods, and then we'll move to Texas, and then we'll have the Champions Cup in there that is very wooded. And so it's just a nice, it adds that extra checkpoint of woods golf that I think is going to keep us going a little, and to the point that hopefully we can enjoy the Midwest swing a little bit better, right? When we go to DDO, when it's going to be a little bit more enjoyable because we haven't watched the same style of golf all year long. And that breakup will hopefully kind of reinvigorate other areas of the tour by making just that one pretty significant change.
I think the sequencing matters. And starting in Florida instead of LVC, and LVC had the weakest courses on tour easily. It was very weak. And so that being gone already helps, but you're also just getting overall more woods courses this year because Beaver State Fling is being re-elevated to the Elite Series. And, Worlds is going to be pretty heavily wooded this year. So you go from 5 woods style courses, and I included Worlds in that from last year up in Vermont, to 7 this year. And that's like a pretty big difference. So, and this doesn't even include all of the European DGPT events, which will invariably be wooded. So I think overall, people who have been complaining about too much golf course are kind of getting what they wanted.
I think it's great. I think it's exactly what disc golf wants and needs at the professional level. I also like that the golf courses that we are sticking with are great. I think we're starting to figure out design on golf courses. Obviously, the big challenge is you can't carve lines at a golf course. You have to just use the trees that are there and hope that it sets up for some really cool park-style golf. But when you look at Glendoveer, I mean, some players still don't like it because it's a golf course, but I forget if it's either the East or the West course, has some of the coolest shots that the players throw all season long. I mean, I don't know. I think we're starting to find a nice common ground, a happy medium, so to speak. And I know it's odd that Paul Macbeth is designing like the courses at Worlds, but then he's also, redesigning Olympus and playing those tournaments. But I also love that players of his caliber are getting to throw their 15 plus years of high level experience into the game and actually start designing these courses. I think our sport at the top level is in great hands. I think we're about to talk about the young guns starting to kind of shape the game at the competitive level. But I love that players like Paul are starting to actually express their opinions and get the opportunity to make it a legitimate thing on tour. I think New London is just one of the nastiest woods courses in the entire world. I cannot wait to see Worlds played there.
Speaking of course changes, this is not something that's going to affect this year's tour, but Jeremy Rusko, the founder of Dynamic Discs, he sold the company to House of Discs. He's now on the board of that. But on his own, external of House of Discs or Dynamic Discs, has purchased the Emporia Country Club. And he is planning to turn it into a new venue called Champions Landing. That's kind of a disc golf first mega venue. I talked to him yesterday, and I'm going to have a lot more about this in an upcoming Cashline article that you'll get if you are an Ultiworld Disc Golf subscriber. But he wants to turn this thing into like a mega tourism locale in the middle of kind of rural Kansas. He wants to have a hotel on site, event space, a brewery, whole new like restaurant facilities and clubhouse, disc golf, obviously, pickleball. They're going to have musicians come in and play. And so like this, I mean, it's a very ambitious concept. He's already gotten $500,000 committed from the city of Emporia. He has a meeting today in Topeka, Kansas, to try to get more funding from the state as well. I believe that he's looking for a bond issue that would allow him to cover up to 50% of the development costs for tourism draws like sports facilities, so the pickleball courts, the disc golf course, etc. So I think the plan is to essentially completely rethink what the Emporia Country Club course looks like. And I mean, he acknowledged that perhaps in the long run, Emporia won't be a tour stop because disc golf outgrows a stop kind of in that rural of a place on a property that isn't that big. But, he basically said, like, could disc golf outgrow the 85 acres that we have to use there? Maybe. But he says we are going to do everything we can to make this a long-run stop that becomes a great experience for players, fans, media, and, basically said they're going to have Eric McCabe come in and start thinking from scratch, like, what would it look like to landscape this property for disc golf? It's a very interesting future potentially there.
I think this is a big deal, and when Vegas left, you have to see the writing on the wall for DDO. It was a tournament that for Worlds did not go as super great when it came to spectatorship. It's a course that has been played out, and once they kind of moved away, and what everyone always said, right, when they moved away Amateur Weekend, which I think is back now, that really hurt kind of the entire feel of that event. And so I think this is an amazing step, and I'm always supportive of properties that are dedicated to disc golf and are controlled by private disc golf entities to then be developed for the professional scene. Love it.
I mean, they're going to put millions of dollars into this. Yeah. Brian, do you think that this can be a tour stop for the long run?
Well, I'm interested to see what happens when they get more free reign over the property. Because again, we almost never get that with golf courses. So I think now that, again, like you said, Eric McCabe gets to go in there and say, hey, I can align this course not just with the length of these golf fairways. I can maybe change things up, utilize the trees in a different way. And I think a lot of times players, they don't hate park style golf. And I feel like there's enough trees on this property to make an open course that's spectator friendly. That also feels like there's more obstacles in the way for the players to get creative around. So I'm super excited. And I think some of the holes on that property are actually great. I think hole number 9, the forced gap hit Mando, is so sweet. I think it's an awesome par 4. It forces 2 really cool shots with high pressure off the tee, and I hope they can do more with the trees on that property. I think it's a really interesting endeavor, and I also just really admire the ambition and the pride that Jeremy Rusko has in the city of Emporia. Like you said, he's not involved with the companies he used to be involved with, but he just loves disc golf and clearly loves business. And wants to invigorate the town. Yeah, there's probably some sort of profit in the back of his head. Like, obviously there's a reason he's doing this, but the value he's delivering to this community, even outside of disc golf, is so cool. I hope it pans out. I hope it turns out to be a fantastic facility.
Yeah, Rusko also told me he's basically helped convince the city of Emporia to commit $300,000 to improving the public courses in Emporia, and convince them to hire a disc golf superintendent to oversee all the courses and make sure that they're kept in great condition.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible, right? Like, think about that. Like, it's got to be the only place in the country and maybe in the world where they have a city employee who is dedicated to focusing on making sure the disc golf courses are in great shape and have great signs and are safe and benches, etc. I think it's an amazing thing. And for the complaints about having to go to Emporia, it's still an iconic property. We've had some incredible moments there. I mean, just recently, Macbeth, like hole 16, there is an elite course to be carved out of that land. I really believe that. It's just, you have to take the time to do it. And they say they're going to bring in golf course landscapers to help them think through it. I love the ambition, and this is one of the first times, really, besides Eagles Crossing maybe, where it feels like somebody's really going to pour money into a disc golf property as a way of looking at it as a long-run investment. And this is the future. We will have 10 courses like this by the end of the decade, if not more. That's what I would bet. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about what's going on the course, make some predictions, give some takes. Stay with us. It's The Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. They just got some new earth tone colorways of their fanny packs, which are awesome. If you're just trying to carry a couple of snacks, maybe some water while you're walking around the course, great to have that. And they've got some new mini zippered pouches dropping tomorrow. If you want to just, keep your headphones in there, some little items you don't want to get lost in the bottom of your bag, get one of these little mini zippered pouches. Very cool. They've also got new Hydra Pack hydration reservoirs available so that you can keep water on the go in your bag as you walk around. You can, of course, get yourself a Pound bag first and foremost at pounddiscgolf.com and then accessorize as you like. Welcome back to The Upshot. Charlie Eisenhood, Josh Mansfield, Brian Earhart with you. And we've got some questions to ask one another about the upcoming season on the course. Josh, I'll let you go first. You can dip into your own personal mailbag.
All right. I'm going to borrow one. I was tagged in the Discord for this message, so I think I get to claim credit for this. It comes from the Discord. I think it's an excellent question. And then we also have a poll in the Discord with the answers as well. So I'm going to ask you two, and then I'll give you what our Discord thinks. Which of these groups do you think will win the most MPO majors in 2024? Number 1, the 2023 major winners. That involves Kyle Klein, Corey Ellis, Isaac Robinson. Option number 2, the major beasts of old, Macbeth and Wysocki. Number 3, the 2019 to 2022 major winners, Gannon Burr, Eagle McMahon, Chris Dickerson, James Conrad. Number 4, and this is quoting the Discord. This is not me. This is the Discord. The Chokes at Majors groups. Heimburg, Lizotte, Barela. Option number 5, the rest of the MPO field.
Wow.
Brian, I'll let you go first.
It's a lot of groups.
It's a lot of
It's a lot of groups to choose from. Well, I think you said the Chokes at Majors group is Calvin, AB, and who?
Simon.
You know, I'm going to go with the recent major champions in Isaac, Corey Ellis, and Kyle Klein. Isaac is unbelievably good. I watched him up close all year long, and none of what he did was a fluke. It was unbelievable, some of the shots he was throwing. And now Nevin is my home course. I live like just down the road from it, and I play that hole back in the woods. It's a par 4. I play it all the time now, and the shots he was throwing on that, like it was just playing darts on a dartboard, is just ridiculous. And yes, everybody on tour can throw technically shots like that, but he was doing it like he was playing catch in a park. He is elite on every level. So just for Isaac being in that group, I'm going to say it's the one. Corey is obviously still getting better, and Kyle Klein, no one really talks about him, but he's unbelievable as well. So that's my group. Easy.
Well, I hear you, Brian. It's hard. It's really hard. These groups are categorized in such a way that it feels impossible to pick the obvious category. I think I'm going to go with the 2019 to 2022 major winners. So that's Gannon, Burr, Eagle McMahon, Chris Dickerson, James Conrad. Now, I feel like I'm drawing dead with Chris Dickerson and James Conrad. I mean, maybe Chris Dickerson is going to like refine the form because he did not have it last year. But I just think that having Gannon and Eagle, like to me, that like if I had to pick 2 guys to win majors this year, those guys might be at the top of my list. So I want those 2 in that category, even though I think it's actually a very interesting exercise because I'm not sure that there's much that separates these various categories. I actually would say I find it quite unlikely that it will be the rest of the MPO field. Even though that's a huge group, I just think pretty much all of the really great players are captured in these other groups. So, Josh, what did the Discord say?
Yeah, so Discord has a tie, actually, between the 2019-2022 majors and the Chokes at Majors group. They both were at 10.
People are ready for that Calvin win.
Yep. So those were tied at 10. Interestingly, though, the rest of the MPO field comes in third at 5. And then the first and second categories, 2023 Major Winners and Major Beasts of Old, are both tied at 2.
Are people sleeping too much on particularly Ricky, but also to an extent Paul?
Probably. I mean, very, very good chance. I mean, Macbeth is, 1 year removed from... He didn't win a major last year, but won in 2022 and lost to Eagle, who played the best disc golf that we've seen in decades.
And let me just remind you, Ricky finished 4th in tour points despite missing basically half the tour.
Mm-hmm.
He did not play until Music City, and then he had to skip Champions Cup, Jonesboro, and OTB Open. So, despite missing tons of time, he still finished 4th.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason Ricky, with a healthy season, couldn't win multiple majors, honestly.
Very true. All right, Charlie. That's
all right.
to you.
Let me go to an... let's see. I this is like an interesting note because I just saw this on Twitter. I didn't realize this. Now, I knew Andrew Marweed was the best Circle 1 putter on tour. This is known. What I did not know is that he actually set the record this year for the highest ever Circle 1 putting percentage at over 93%. Now, technically in the UDisc Live era, but I would venture to say that it's probably all time. So my question is, and I will ask this to Brian first, will a player in either MPO or FPO set a new putting record for their division? So that's percentage made from Circle 1 or Circle 2. Obviously, we only have 5 or 6 years of data, but looking at the years that we do have, will somebody in either division set a new putting record?
You're saying this year, 2024?
Yes.
93% Circle 1 is pretty unbelievable. And this is Circle 1X. So previously, even when I started touring, tap-ins counted towards your Circle 1 percentage, and now it doesn't. So 93 from, mid-range to late Circle 1 is insane. The only argument for Circle 2 that someone could break a new record this year is because we're playing less open courses. Less of putts being affected by the wind, and I think once you get towards the late Circle 2 range, it's kind of up in the air whether or not you can make a putt consistently. But I think Gannon was like 41% Circle 2 last year, which is unbelievable. And then I forgot what Own was at, but I think she was the best Circle 2 putter, and she was pretty close to that as well. But now they have less wind likely to deal with. So.
Own's Circle 2 record is 31%. That's the Circle 2 max. She set that in 2022. No one really has even come close to that since. The elite number is like 21%, which is what Own's number was this year. I don't really know how she set such an amazing stat in 2022, but just could not miss from deep.
So I have to say something about Marweed real quick, though. I talked to, I believe it was either someone at UDisc or Statmando. I had a conversation with some stats person that dug deep into this, and Marweed was far and away the best mid Circle 1 putter, like best 20-25 foot putter in the game. Apparently, by whatever metric it was, Paul Macbeth was the best late Circle 1 putter. But overall, Marweed had the best percentage. Just wanted to throw that out there. He was just rock solid from the range that a lot of players get the yips from.
I didn't realize this until I just was looking at the numbers, but Gannon Burr set the highest ever Circle 2 record this year at 40% Circle 2. He was the first guy to eclipse 40. Mm-hmm. So will somebody do it again? What do you think?
Yes, for sure. Less tournaments to have to do it at, and like I said, less open exposure to the wind.
Okay. What do you think, Josh?
Give me the yes as well, and I wanna highlight a name really quick. Silva Saarinen, first real year on tour. She was Own set the mark in FPO, 84% Circle 1X, 21% Circle 2 putting. Silva Saarinen, 83% Circle 1X, 20% Circle 2. You've got a special player in Silva, and I think that she has the real ability to challenge some of those numbers this year. And that's just one name of many that I think have that capability. So yeah, I'll take the yes as well.
It's going to be real interesting, but the bar gets raised every year, it feels like. All right, Josh, what you got? We talk a lot about new winners and who has the potential to get their first win on tour. I'm going to flip this question on its head. Which MPO and FPO winner is the least likely to repeat in 2024?
Interesting question.
And this is winner, not major winner. This is just anybody on tour.
Right. Elite Series or major.
Are we okay, so no silver.
No silver.
Let me think.
You're making me think about winners now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, let me give you some candidates that came kind of to my mind. Emerson Keith. You've got Parker Welk. You have Corey Ellis. You have those were the big ones that came to the first ones that were on the top of my mind. You have Adam Hammis.
FPO, it's like, I guess Holland Handley would be probably the number one candidate.
Yeah, FPO might be a bit harder there.
Okay, well, across the two divisions, I think a lot of people are going to reflexively want to pick Parker Welk, but I'm actually going to pick Emerson Keith, who didn't really have any tournaments where he was really in contention besides the one that he won. Now, you could say the same thing about Parker Welk, but Parker Welk just came out of the gates and played amazing to start this year. He wins the Shelley Sharp Memorial, and while certainly not as talented a field, he also wins La Mirada Open. He was the highest rated player there, but there are plenty of 1,000 rated guys in the field. So I actually think Parker Welk, while I think it's unlikely, I still think Emerson Keith probably the least likely in my mind, although maybe a bag change will do him good. We'll see. What do you think, Brian?
I think I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, I think Emerson's a phenomenal player. He has been for a long time, but he's been playing on the tour for a long time. And, he got into the Tour Championship, which is a really impressive feat at this point on the tour. But I kind of agree with you in that Parker Welk is kind of on the up and up right now, and it seems like he's just getting better and better and better. And when I watched him play at DDO, I was inspired. I mean, I saw a really complete skill set, and I saw a lot of motivation. I saw a lot of new, fresh energy coming from him. And then, 2 wins to start out the year. He popped off some really incredible golf. So we'll see how it goes, but I'd have to agree. FPO, anyone who won last year, I think could repeat, and is probably on the up and up. Holland and Cat won for the first time, but I think they could very easily win again.
All right. Which MPO player is going to win the most events in 2024? And will they win Player of the Year? The answer this year in 2023 was no. Gannon won the most events and did not win Player of the Year. So who wins the most, and will they add Player of the Year to their resume as well?
It feels like I'm fanboying a little bit, but there's context to it. I think Isaac is going to win a lot of events this year. I think he's going to win a handful of Elite Series events. He could snag another major, who knows? But I've played with him in the past, and just his trajectory, his rise to where he is now is so impressive, and it's happened so fast. And he's still young. He's still getting to his athletic prime. I mean, he only graduated college a couple years ago. So he's my guess to win the most events, and with that could also come Player of the Year, because if he wins another major, which he's proven to us he can do, now you get 200% of the points.
Give me Eagle McMahon. Eagle had
Bold.
A season that was overshadowed by Calvin's, but without Calvin would absolutely, he would have been the Calvin without without the wins, right? I mean, if you look at his schedule, second at Champions Cup, second at Jonesboro, he had 4th at Preserve, 4th at PCS, 4th at European Open, which got dropped. He had to drop a 4th place at a major because of how well he played at the majors last year.
Wow.
Finishes the year 2nd at DGLO, 3rd at Worlds, 1st at Discmania Open, a silver event, and 2nd at MVP.
He was the best player in the second half.
Yes, yeah, he absolutely was. He didn't get the win, right? And so that's why it's easy to forget that Eagle was actually playing amazing disc golf. And we're not too far removed from seasons where Eagle was winning the most. And so I think I'm picking Eagle for a resurgence here. He's got the new bag, which is obviously the risk, but he's one who I really think he's shown the ability to close out events like that. And I really think he can. Wouldn't be surprised if Eagle pulls in another major this year as well, giving him Player of the Year.
I cannot decide. I'm going chalk. I'm going continuation. I think it's going to be Gannon Burr, but I can't decide if I'd rather pick him or Calvin. I mean, the thing is, there's all these narratives that get created around players based on very kind of random things. Yes, were there moments where Calvin had a chance to win a tournament and then didn't play his best round and failed to close it out? 100%. Mm-hmm. He obviously didn't win nearly as much as you would have expected, if you ran the Pythagorean on it. It's just he didn't close out these tournaments, but probably would if given enough time span. So if he plays the same way he did last year, right? You run it back, basically. He plays the exact same level. He probably wins 5 tournaments. It's just kind of random that he didn't win more. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy to ascribe it to he's unable to close. And we've certainly had people make the case. We literally got a 2,000 word email like making the case for why Calvin chokes every time. But I don't know. Like, I think he's got a really good chance to be the number one guy again, win Player of the Year, and win the most tournaments. But I'm going to take Gannon. He's wanted to be the Discmania guy for a couple years now. I think, will we see him step forward because he's filling some holes in his bag that he didn't have at Prodigy? I think that's very plausible to me. He's now like established on tour. He kind of had weirdly like his sophomore slump last year, and yet he still won the most tournaments. It's just he was very inconsistent. Like he had weeks where he played terrible.
I always wonder though, when a young player signs a big contract, what that added responsibility and that added money does to them. And what it does mentally to them. Maybe they start to feel like no longer is the game just about me playing and doing the thing that I love. It's now pleasing these other people that are paying me a lot of money. You wonder what he's going to do with that pressure. Some people might run with it and thrive. Some people might get really scared and get imposter syndrome and struggle. And he's going to have to maybe take a couple seasons to get used to it. But he has impressed me every single time that he's stepped out on the course, and his maturity for his age, just the way he speaks about the game, is really impressive in its own right. So I'm open to being impressed for sure.
All right, Josh, what you got?
Well, while we're on the discussion of Calvin, let's just follow up one more question. Which comes first? Calvin wins a major, or Anthony Barela wins an Elite Series?
It's not a lot more chances for AB to win an Elite Series.
A lot more chances.
There's just more tournaments.
Yep.
I mean,
I'm going to say AB.
Yeah, I agree fully.
I just think he's good enough and was close enough at times last year that he's gonna pop off one weekend on a bomber course and take it down. And Calvin, like, I don't really think I see him winning at Northwood Black, and so then he's got to wait a while.
Calvin won Ledgestone 2 years ago in the weird shortened version and took second. I think he might hold the course record at Northwood Black.
Am I fraudulent?
I was gonna say,
I might be fraudulent.
That
might be a fraudulent take.
I watched the round. He shot 9 under par.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because my brother was on that card. I went up to watch him because I was in between, jobs that I was doing. And my dad was following and doesn't know anything about disc golf. And I walk up to him and he goes, "I don't know who this tall, lanky guy is, but he is throwing darts out there." And he was right. I mean, Calvin played the course exactly how it was supposed to be played. I think he could very easily win Champions Cup. He's only one of a handful of guys that can shoot that 7, 8, 9 under par mark on that course. People truly don't understand how absolutely ridiculous those numbers are. Bogey can happen with a drop of a hat. I mean, it's so tough.
I'm not going to try to talk my way out of just a blunder, because like this year he was 6 under through 2 rounds there. He had a really good round in round 2, and then had a big bogey stretch in the middle of his round 3 that kept him at even par. But he finished second at Ledgestone. I was just wrong. I'm just wrong. So I could see him winning.
That doesn't necessarily invalidate your Anthony Barela pick, though.
I stand by the take for AB.
That's fine. That's
but
fine.
Mostly because of the math.
Sure. No, that math that's fine. That is a fine take.
Josh, you want to weigh in?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, I think I probably agree with the Anthony Barela choice. That would probably be the route that I would go as well.
I will say, I have Calvin winning a major in 2024,
and I do not.
Off the schneid.
Yeah, I think Anthony Barela played really well at Music City Open. He took second. Remember, he had that 4 putt. He was in the lead, and then 3 or 4 putted on like hole 14. And that ended his tournament there and let Simon win it. But there are a couple courses early that if Calvin doesn't win Champions Cup, Anthony Barela could have this contest locked up before European Open. In fact, his best chance, I think, is to lock it up before European Open.
All right, I want to hear some breakout player candidates for the 2024 season. What do you think, Brian?
I have two that I have done a little math on. We just talked about Parker Welk, but I don't think he's a part of the two that I want to talk about. Ezra Robinson and Cole Radalin are the two guys that I think are about to pop off. And yes, we already know who they are. They're starting to play pretty good, but I think they're about to play spectacular good. Both of them have already played tournaments this year, and I believe they're both averaging 1050, and they're playing fantastic. They're winning tournaments by a sizable number of strokes. And I think Ezra blew me away towards the end of last year. It seemed like he finally found his voice as an elite player. I always knew he was good. But now it feels like he's really finding out how he can score with the skill set that he has. And then Cole Radalin is just unbelievable talent. He kind of has this really cool old school way of throwing putters and mid ranges, and yet he can still throw 6 to 650 with a distance driver. I love also watching him kind of find his voice as a player as well. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he still is physically growing if we look at age and biology and whatnot. So he could be even taller and stronger over the next couple of years. So those are my two picks.
I have a name that's been buzzy. I don't know if this is legit, but there's been a lot of talk, and I think maybe this is just a halo effect of Simon Lizotte about Paul Kranz. Now, Paul Kranz, he's 1023 rated. He didn't really play too many notable tournaments last year. He was 40th at Worlds, and otherwise mostly played A and B tiers. He did play Champions Cup as well. He finished 20th. So if we see him, he's got the new MVP sponsorship. If we see him go out on tour, I think he's someone we could see pop off a little bit. I mean, when you're watching him playing against Simon in some of these videos, like, he's absolutely holding his own. So he's like a name that's like not really as known that I think could actually show up and have a really good season. He won a bunch of A and B tiers last year.
Can I weigh in?
Oh,
You can.
yeah.
Real quick. If it's his first year on tour, I think Paul Kranz has a sweet swing. I think he has a swing that reminds me of a lot of like European players like Lauri Lehtinen and all those players that just throw gorgeous lines. But first year on tour, there's so much information to take in. There's so much learning, trial and error that has to happen before you feel like you can really attack a course. But I think this could be a year we see 1 or 2 weekends where Paul finds the stride. And then the year after that is where we could see him establish himself. He's the real deal for sure.
He's signed up for all the early tour events. You got some names, Josh?
I do. One in particular that comes to mind. I'm gonna give it to Silva Saarinen. It's the one that I'm looking forward to. She's also signed up for all the early events. She misses, so I guess her first tournament's going to be the U.S. Women's in late March, and then she will be playing all the way through Champions Cup before going back to Europe for the Copenhagen Open. Silva Saarinen last season set a record for wins, or was like last person since Kristen to win as much as she did in Europe. Except, if you take out European Open and do just the European silver swing, she won 4 in a row. She also then comes back to the States and takes 6th at Worlds. And don't get me wrong, was a ways behind in that 6th place, but that still requires a level of skill and talent that I think is still developing. And with a full season on tour, we very easily could see her show up at a tournament. And now she's one of those that's limited by power, but we've seen players who are limited by power before play well, and I think that there are courses that are going to set up well for her game.
Agreed. Fully agree.
FPO name, I'm not going to take the obvious one, which is Ellie Midling. Mm-hmm. Her time will come, but I think she's going to have an up and down bumpy year, as you would expect from a teenager. I'm pretty curious about Lucky Lorenzen, who arguably had a breakout season in 2023, but I don't know if you would quite put it to that level, but she certainly played some of her best disc golf. She is knocking on the door of 950 rated, and I think showed us some really good stuff at the end of last season. Sixth at Idlewild, seventh at Worlds, with that huge putt to keep the top 10 spot, eighth at U.S. Women's. So I'm pretty curious if she can step forward. Obviously, she's been training super hard. If you watch any of her social media stuff, she is switching bags. We'll see how that affects her. But I like her chances of having like a nice little kind of mini breakout season, even if she doesn't win a tournament, but, multiple top 5s, top 10s.
She also announced that she's got a 4-year visa in the U.S. now. That's all taken care of, wrapped up. I think that sometimes we don't focus enough on how important the legal side is for European players to not have to stress about in terms of their ability to focus on the game, train, travel, etc. Which FPO player, not named Kristen Tattar, is most likely to win FPO Player of the Year? Charlie?
I'll say it. Paige Pierce. That is not going to be a popular opinion. But I think we could see the Paige Renaissance year.
Love it. I'm all for it. She still won events last year.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. People act like she doesn't exist anymore. It's crazy.
I think it's obviously because she was dominant for so long. I think people wanted a new hero, but what was it, like 2022? She got PDGA Player of the Year and people freaked out, but then you look at her season and you're like, what the heck? Why is this even in question? Like why are we freaking out that Paige had a phenomenal season? Like, of course she did. I think if we're not saying Paige Pierce, I can't wait to see how she plays after, dealing with such a freak injury, and having all of the wind taken out of her sails. I also, if I had to pick another one, she's already a champion, but I think Haley King can have a season that's better than we expect. I think she feels like she's starting to mature mentally, physically. She's putting a ton of work in this offseason to get herself ready for tour. And we all know that she has one of the highest skill ceilings that we've ever seen, but this could be the year that she wins more events than people realize. I think this is going to be a good one, especially with less tournaments being on the tour.
Give me Missy Gannon.
Sure. Odds on pick, I think.
It really should be. And the problem is I think that there are times Missy won Player of the Year. Was it 2021 when she won Throw Pink?
Yeah. The fraudulent victory.
The fraudulent victory. Did not deserve Player of the Year that year. But Missy, I think, with Kristen Tattar, Missy could elevate to Kristen Tattar's level. Mm-hmm. It is spectacular watching what Missy has done and the level of progression year over year that she continues to make. And it really is something spectacular. Her game is becoming more and more complete. She's adding distance. She really has all the necessary tools. The only thing that's held her back is that there's another player who also has all the tools that's just a tiny bit sharper. Missy
has an elite forehand.
And has an elite forehand.
That's an forehand.
For me, it's a stretch to say that she could reach Kristen's level.
And
Kristen's playing on a level that we've never seen.
You're right. You're right. I mean, it would probably require Kristen to come down a little bit. But man, Missy has just been so close and has been in it so many times and wins in big moments that Missy. I'll take the odds-on pick. Give me Missy Gannon, and helps that Champions Cup is at Northwood Black, where I don't know, Missy's won multiple times now. So
she plays great there.
Yeah. Give me Missy Gannon.
My final bonus question.
Okay.
Kristen is 998 rated. Well, I feel like we've kind of forgotten about the conversation because it's off season, but is she going to hit 1,000 this year?
Oh yeah,
no question. You think easy?
Ooh.
No questions at all. I got nothing. I got nothing. It's just it's inevitable that it's going to happen, and I just love seeing what she writes about what she's doing this offseason, it seems like she's like ascending to this enlightened state mentally and physically. She's putting so much work into controlling her mentality and like trying to stay present in every moment. And that can only eliminate those moments where maybe you do feel burnt out emotionally, physically, and you just don't have your best stuff. Maybe all this work she's putting in eliminates those tournaments. I mean, Jonesboro last year, when it looked like she clearly wanted to go home, is a great example. Maybe she doesn't have that next year and puts on an even better performance that we're not even expecting.
I'm really curious to see what happens because Kristen's first event of the season is going to be Open at Austin in March. Mm-hmm. So she will not start the tour in a couple weeks here. And that was one of her worst performances last year. She finished 5th. Obviously, what a season to have that be one of your worst performances.
Yeah, oh no.
5th place. But, you know, she had a great opening round. She shot over 1,000 in her opening round, but then she shot a 928 final round. So how does she handle that tournament coming back to it? I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on those early rounds because she hasn't played in 6 months or something between the end of last season and March. I think she's not going to get there.
Oh,
I just think it's like you have to. She has to shoot above 1,000 for like an extended stretch to start the year, maybe. But I think I think it's more likely we'll see the sort of more inconsistent Kristen that we saw at the beginning of last season. She's got a lot going on in Estonia, and a lot of it is not practicing disc golf right now.
And that's exactly, and you don't even need like the up and down necessarily. You stick on 3 or 4 950, 940 rated rounds, and you've just made your life so much harder, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Fresh. Yeah, and I agree with you. Here's the other part that I want to pair with it. She has something that's really going for her at the beginning of the season, and that is that she has 2 events and then a third that are courses that are going to be a little bit shorter or designed for the FPO game and have the opportunity, I think, that she could really score well. That's U.S. Women's, Texas State's, which that Houston course has a separate FPO course. And then she's playing an A tier, the annual Persimmon Ridge Retreat? Persimmon Ridge, thank you. Out in Arkansas. Those things, I think, bode well for her to shoot well and to play well. But if those courses that I think give her a good opportunity, because you know if you take away courses that aren't necessarily the longest, then the only thing that players like Paige or Henna have on Kristen is that they can throw a bit further than her. You take away those courses and make them more designed for FPO and remove the benefit of that distance advantage. She really has the opportunity to separate herself. But if it's on the early part of the season when I don't think she's going to be in the best form, I think she's going to lose out on the key moments when she needs to be getting to that 1,000 mark. And then I think it's just going to get harder from there, especially when she goes back over to Europe. We've seen ratings over in Europe just they're so much harder to get there. And starting in June, she's going to be back in Europe for a while, and that's going to make life a little bit more difficult, I think, for her.
It's very similar to the dynamic when Paige was trying to get to 1,000.
It is.
She's going to drop rounds that average, I'm ballparking right now, that probably average in the high 980s. So she's dropping rounds below her rating, which is a positive, but it does mean that she wants to replace those with that north of 1,000 mark. I definitely think it's possible. It's going to be fascinating to see if she can pull it off. It would be quite the story and one for the history books.
So real quick, going into last season, she came off of a surgery, correct?
Yes, she was.
Yeah.
She had dealt with the elbow stuff.
We can't act like she's the same player going into this season that she was last year.
It's a great point.
She's going to start the year with a much higher
it's not like she came out and played bad at the beginning of last season.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me give you. I want to give you 2 more ratings context, Charlie, that you brought up as well. Going through the end of March, She has 2,000 rated rounds. She's got the 1021 at Waco and a 1011 at the Open at Austin.
From last season, yeah.
From last season, yep. Everything else through March is below her rating. However, when you get to April, she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 rated rounds in the month of April.
With some like 1026s in the mix.
With a 1026, 1018, 1016, 1012, 1019, two 1026s. Yeah. So if she's going to hit 1,000, it really looks like she needs to do it before the end of March. She's got to play great in March, and then at the April ratings update, that's going to be her best opportunity this season.
I'm fired up. What a nice subplot to start the year.
Great bonus question, Charlie.
Thank you. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for being here and joining us as we get ready for the start of the season. We've got a lot of awesome shows coming your way in the next couple of weeks. And let's see, what do we got next week? I think we're going to be talking to Jeff Spring and also Kristen, who's going to join us on Thursday next week. So really looking forward to all of the conversations. And Brian, thanks for being here. So excited. You're leaving for tour in just a couple of days, right?
Just a couple of days, heading down to Florida for the All-Star event and the Chess.com Invitational, another really exciting partnership. A couple of my favorite worlds colliding. So yeah, it's going to be a great start.
Don't miss our subscriber bonus segment Out the Back, where Josh and I continue our conversations about the 2024 season and go deeper with some questions from the Discord as well. Get yourself a subscription, discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe, and we will talk to you next week right here on The Upshot.